To understand why Singapore was chosen as a trading settlement, it is important to know the relationship between the British and the Dutch in the early 19th century. At that time, European trading companies such as the British and the Dutch East India Companies were competing fiercely outside Europe for profit and monopoly of trade routes. To understand the Dutch and British trade rivalry, we will be using the map on page 23 on your Secondary 2 history textbook. We will insert the Dutch and British flags on this map and show their area of influence, which will help us understand the fierce trade rivalry or competition. Britain had already developed commerce with China, India and the Malay archipelago in the areas of Penang and Bencoolen. Now insert the British flags on these regions on page 23 on your history textbook. Your map would look similar to the one on my left. The Dutch were the main European power in the Malay archipelago. They controlled a large part of the region including Java and Malacca. Now insert the Dutch flags on the map on page 23 of your history textbook. The Dutch restricted the British and other Europeans to trade only at Batavia and Java. British traders were charged high fees for using the port and had to pay heavy taxes on goods which they sold or bought. Every one of the Asian trading boats had to fly a Dutch flag and carry a Dutch permit or pass. They were not allowed to trade with any ports except Dutch-controlled ones. By enforcing such rules, the Dutch enjoyed a trade monopoly. Thus, the Dutch became the biggest rival of the British in Southeast Asia. After inserting the areas of influence of the Dutch flags on the map of page 23 of your textbook, you will get a complete picture of trade rivalry between the Dutch and the British. In the early part of the 19th century, Britain's trade with China had become very lucrative. The British sold opium, which was produced in India, to the Chinese. In return, they bought tea from the Chinese and sold it in Europe. Now pause a moment and view Chapter 2 Part 1C video. Why Singapore was chosen by the British. This video illustrates Britain's trade with China. Please use the map of page 23 while viewing the video presentation.
We live in a global economy where goods, people and ideas move freely across the planet. And Singapore, at the crossroads of great shipping lanes, is a city born of globalization. Ever since the 19th century, its fortunes have depended on the ebb and flow of international trade. Back then, the world's largest corporation was based in London. The East India Company was unlike any merchant company of old. It had its own civil service and army, and ruled over a fifth of the world's population. Its network of trade routes stretched across half the world, and in its heyday, the company generated more revenue than Britain itself. And its most valuable cargo was tea. Since the days of Marco Polo, Chinese tea had become immensely popular in Europe. Half the company's profits came from supplying this one fashionable drink.
The British had cultivated a particular liking for tea, and the market was growing all the time. The East India Company found that this was a major item for their business and kept the company going. But what could they pay for the tea with? They had relatively little to sell to China to pay for the tea. This was a problem for the company for a long time, until they eventually discovered opium. Opium was the one thing that the Chinese did not have and did want in large quantities. And once the British discovered that the Chinese needed the opium and that they had supplies of it in India, an area like here, at the foot of the Straits of Malacca, turning round into the South China Sea, became very important in their eyes.
The East India Company was producing opium in northern India and shipping it to China, where it was used to buy supplies of tea, which could then be sent back to England. It was the company's most profitable trade route, but every one of its ships had to pass through a narrow passage known as the Malacca Straits. To protect its interests, the company wanted to set up a port somewhere at the foot of the Malacca Straits. But there was a problem. For 200 years, the Dutch had controlled the East Indies. They were the military and economic superpower in the region, and it was company policy to do nothing which might upset them.
British ports at Penang and Bencoolen were not strategically located. They were situated far from the main trading area in the Malay archipelago. Bencoolen was situated on wrong side of Sumatra, facing the Indian Ocean instead of the Straits of Malacca. The Dutch controlled Straits of Malacca and Sunda Straits. They could cut off valuable trade between Penang and the Malay archipelago from the British. Penang, lying too far north of the Straits of Malacca, was not useful for protecting British ships. Raffles was very concerned about the Dutch spreading their trade monopoly. This prompted the British need to search for a new trading port to protect British shipping and trading along the Straits of Malacca. There were other factors that had also influenced Raffles to choose Singapore. Singapore was located at the heart of the Malay archipelago, enabling the British to trade in that region. Singapore had an excellent port and a good supply of drinking water to refresh the people on the British ships traveling to and fro Europe and China.